and welcome to another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. We are here at the Roger Williams Park, and guess what? Roger Williams Park Zoo also has a Jack-o'-lantern spectacular going on right now. You can experience it, be a part of it. I am here with what's known as a master carver, George Nikolopoulos. That's hard to say. It's about 17 syllables, but thank you for having us on your show today.
Thank you so much for being here. It's fantastic.
Let's talk about what a master carver is, first of all.
Master carver is a name or a title I was assigned on a poster board at an event I did earlier today.
So, is that right, really?
Yeah.
So
I'm just a pumpkin carver, just like any number of us. We don't really have titles.
How'd you start out?
Well, I started out first as a spectator. I saw the show in 1999 when it was still in Oxford, Massachusetts, before the company partnered with the Roger Williams Park Zoo. And I was blown away. I couldn't believe that someone had the vision to create something quite like this.
And at that point, you hadn't carved a single pumpkin, right?
Except as a child,
yeah,
you know,
would
on
do
our
a
porch or
jack-o'-lantern
something. Yeah, exactly. I had no idea that I would even be interested or even would end up doing it. I didn't know the people that did it at all. And 5 years later, I was at work one day talking to the fella standing next to me. And we're getting to know each other like you would anybody at a new job. And he told me that one of the things he and his friends did was put on this crazy pumpkin show. And I kept going as a guest a couple years more now that I knew the guys. And then one day I said, hey, you need a hand? And that was 10 years ago.
Do you need to be an artist in general? Do you have to have some artistic skill to
you
be
would
able to?
think.
Yeah, you would think.
And some of the people, most of the people that work here are incredible artists.
Because I'm looking at your work here, and you do spectacular work. We'll get into it because we're actually going to have George do some work. So we'll let you sort of describe what you will begin to do, and we'll keep talking to you through the whole thing.
Sure, so I can walk you through the process from the beginning to end, if you will. You know, the pumpkin will kind of define what you can put on it, and the image will ultimately define which pumpkin or what shape, size, texture, skin, etc. you want to choose. The pumpkin that I have here is a perfect pumpkin for carving. The reason I say that is that this particular color of skin and the ripeness of the pumpkin take the ink very well. If you have an overripe pumpkin, it'll take the ink really well, but it'll glow a little too much once you stick the light bulb in it. Pumpkins that have too much gourd in them, as opposed to the pumpkin, will ultimately not glow as well. The density of the skin of the pumpkin is such that it doesn't refract the light.
And that kind of defeats the purpose of jack-o'-lantern should be, right?
And what it ends up doing is it takes someone like us, like once you do the image, then when you're gutting it, because we will ultimately cut a hole in the back of this and scrape the guts out, you have to scrape it so thin that you compromise the structural integrity of the pumpkin, and it'll fall faster than normal.
Right.
You know, we're lucky to get 7 days out of each one of these, so a 33-day show, each pumpkin is going to be carved and recarved 3 or 4 or 5 times maybe. Okay. So it's very important that we choose the pumpkin for the image, and that we also take care in maintaining the pumpkin, making sure that it has good structure, make sure that if we do have warm days, we go back inside, clean it out, things like that.
So when you say recarve, you're talking about the same pumpkin. It's not like when one decides to go, you kind of toss it and go to another one very similar. You're talking about maintaining the same pumpkin for a while, right?
Well, so we'll maintain the same pumpkin for about 5 to 7 days. Okay. Sometimes you can stretch it to 10. Ultimately, each pumpkin in its place it'll end up being 4 or 5 different pumpkins that hold that spot in the artistic list, so to speak.
Now, I want to backtrack a little bit because I want people to understand what the Jack-o'-lantern Spectacular, which is what this show is all about. So, because it did evolve from what you were talking about, back in the 90s to what it is now.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, when it first started 27 years ago, it was just a display of 200 pumpkins in our founder's yard. It started as a fundraiser for the local school, and where it's come to today, and how I describe it is, you know, our tagline is the greatest glow on earth. That's what we say.
Actually, yeah.
What it is it's an art show that takes place in a fantastic setting at the Roger Williams Park Zoo on their wetlands trail, and we have a theme every year. That theme is always family friendly. The theme is always something that can appeal to a large number of people. This year's theme, Pumpkinville, USA, is kind of a nod to the great United States and the people and the things and the places that make this the greatest country in the world. And
even during the government shutdown, by the way?
You know, you got to take the good with the bad.
That's right,
I think.
You know, and it doesn't affect Roger Williams Park Zoo at all.
It doesn't affect Roger Williams Park Zoo at all. We are running strong, and it's incredible. You'll walk through a 1/4-mile trail And in that trail, we represent the heartland of the United States, the Deep South. Here we are in New Orleans, so you see Louis Armstrong and a Mardi Gras pumpkin behind me. My pumpkin doesn't quite fit this theme. I don't know where my pumpkin belongs.
It's a different theme every year, right?
It's a different theme every year.
Yeah. How's the theme determined?
So the ownership of Passion for Pumpkins, which is the production company that owns the show, we collaborate starting in January. I'm not an owner myself, but they respect my opinion, and so we chat. And John Reckner, who's the founder, really kind of drives the thought process to determine the theme. Again, we want it to be friendly for families and kids. We're not a scary show.
Right.
And we find something that we can incorporate a lot of different things. We want history, we want some education, we want whimsy, we want fantasy, we want popular culture and fun. Yeah. This is a fun night in October, a great night out with your family or friends.
And it's designed to be viewed at night?
It is, yeah. The magic happens when the sun goes down. That's when we say the pumpkins come alive.
Okay.
If you can imagine on the trail, in addition to about 140 of these intricately carved pumpkins that are separated into different galleries, again, like I mentioned, the South, the Wild West, the heartland of America, Motown. You also have 5,000 traditional jack-o'-lanterns that are carved and spread out throughout the park. And that sets a scene that is really magical for people to walk through. We try and take people and kind of distort their perception of reality and bring them to a place and transport them to a place where they have memories of their childhood, memories of what they've either seen live or in pictures in different places in the world, or in this case, different places of the country. We play music in the background, and each gallery gets its own soundtrack to kind of add to that. We have special effects, lights. I mean, it really is a remarkable experience.
How long does it take to go through?
It depends on the visitor. I would say that folks, there are occasional waits to get into the show, but once you're in the park and you're on the trail, about 45 minutes to an hour.
Huh? Wow.
Yeah, we're a quarter of a mile long.
Wow.
It takes a lot of space.
How many pumpkins would you say?
There are over 5,000 pumpkins out right now.
All different sizes too.
All different sizes, from 1 pound up to almost 2,000 pounds.
Well, we're about 8 minutes into the show, so I want you to start doing some work here while we talk.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So how do you start?
So after I've chosen the pumpkin and chosen the reference images that I'm going to work, I start framing my picture. You can see on this side of the pumpkin, I've completed the majority of the carving on this side of this spaceman, Navy submarine guy.
I was going to ask you, like,
helmet. I'm not sure what this is or where it is, but
will this evolve?
This will continue to evolve. I would say that around here I'm pretty much done. I would probably want to do. It's pretty intricate,
to be honest with you.
I put a lot of detail in my pumpkins.
Yeah.
Different artists are tasked with different responsibilities, and certainly when we have 80-degree weather and it's hot and humid like it was last week, you can't take the time to do this level of detail.
It was summer.
It was summer, and pumpkins don't like that weather.
Right.
When you have this type of weather where it's kind of cloudy, pumpkins and cooler, pumpkins
perfect
love
fall
this. This is perfect pumpkin weather, perfect fall weather. Imagine walking through the zoo at night, getting for the adults, getting a pumpkin ale. For the kids, there's hot chocolate, mulled cider, things like that. Get a warm drink, and you meander through the trail with kettle corn.
It's a great way of painting the picture, the way you're describing it there, too.
Thank you. Well, and speaking of painting,
it's not really painting. It's kind of like, not even carving, really. It's almost like sort of etching.
It's almost etching. We use a combination of techniques. So we do paint. I use oil-based grayscale markers, and to create the blacks and the grays.
Well, so it won't come off if you happen to rub it. Okay.
Yeah, because we're out in the elements, and these have to last. So I'll paint the image first, and then we use all custom-made tools. There's really nobody else in the world that does this, and so we have to invent everything that we want to do. And I've taken for example, this tool I'm using is a bobby pin that's bent in half, and then I sharpen with a Dremel, and then I have my sharpening stone here, and I keep it sharp as I carve. We use a lot of techniques like woodblock carving techniques or tattooing techniques even. And so what I'll do is I'll just go through and lightly scratch, etch, remove different depths and different textures of the skin to show where the light would highlight whatever I'm carving. So this is his oxygen tube, or his breathing tube that's attached to this mask on his face. Apparently he must have a mask because the glass dome on his head is open.
It's funny, you did the picture and now you're still trying to figure out exactly whether he's in space or under the sea. Or,
exactly.
you know?
Throughout the process, I mean, I looked at space shuttle pictures, I looked at rocket pictures, I looked at, I kind of drew this really rough framework on the left-hand side of the pumpkin from an antique submarine and its controls. And what I'll do is that the image will evolve as you paint and carve and draw, and then once we feel like it's at a point where it can go into the show, we'll then take a drywall saw, actually a jab saw as it's called, and cut a hole in the back of the pumpkin and take a spoon.
So not from the top like if someone would normally.
No, that removes almost 100% of the structural integrity of the pumpkin. And you can't do that. I'll cut a hole out of the back, and then this is my spoon, my gutting spoon. I carry this with me at all times during the show. It's basically a kitchen spoon that I've taken a grinder to. I've sharpened one side of it and then blunted the other side.
That's great. All your tools, again, are like homemade inventions.
They're all homemade, yeah. But if you imagine, this will give me almost every radius that I would need to get into all the different grooves and nooks and crannies on the inside of the pumpkin. You need to get the inside of the pumpkin to a fairly uniform and fairly thin
to the wall
texture. Yeah, to the wall. Depending on the size of the pumpkin, I'll take it to,
because the lighting won't work if you don't get it as thin as possible.
Yeah.
Now, for regular Joes at home that are carving their jack-o'-lantern, would you recommend that they go in the back as opposed to the top too, so that they can have some integrity? Maybe it lasts a little longer.
For a traditional jack-o'-lantern, what I would do is cut out the bottom. Actually,
okay.
Yeah, because pumpkins are uneven. And the last thing that you would want to do, especially if you've got a candle inside, is that pumpkin, a big gust of wind, for that to fall over, maybe knock off the candle, damage the pumpkin, or worse, knock on wood, Yeah,
well, you would probably advocate safety as much as possible.
Safety is incredibly important, especially when you're talking about bringing kids into it.
Right.
Like when I say we use a jab saw or a drywall saw, that's certainly an adult tool.
Absolutely.
They do make carving kits for kids that are out there, and those are much safer. And I would certainly recommend those. But when there is parental supervision, or if the kid's a little bit older, the child is a little bit older, I would say that it's a perfect tool to use. I wouldn't use a straight knife. A kitchen knife a lot of people use, but they don't have the flexibility to create rounded corners.
And the other thing is, if you got creative with your pumpkin, and if you use the wrong tool, it could ruin all your hard work, because all the creativity is done beforehand.
Yeah.
Then you do the carving, and then you could totally waste all that time.
And I tell people all the time, you can, younger artists or newer artists that are with the company, that you can always take more off, but you can never put back. This isn't something that you can block the light. Even when the skin dries out in the elements, you can't. It doesn't look the same going back and putting more ink on it or anything like that. Once you've removed the flesh, it's gone from these pumpkins. Now, for jack-o'-lanterns, every face in the whole, that in anyone's imagination, is apropos. Right? We like making sure that there are pupils and teeth on every jack-o'-lantern, because I feel it gives them character and emotion.
That's detail too, you know?
But even those, those kind of soulless, just round eyes and a big gaping mouth. To me, those are as important as any other face on a pumpkin. They have personality and they have style.
If someone stops and stares at it and they're fascinated by it, or at least interested in it, then it touched somebody.
Exactly. Anything that's on this trail can appeal to one person in particular, and you'll find. We'll find as we're out on the trail at night inspecting things, making sure things look good, touching up our pumpkins. You'll see a kid go bananas and run over to a jack-o'-lantern and say, "That's my favorite," and it's the most
Are they taking pictures and everything?
Oh yeah,
people put them on their Facebook pages, all that.
We do ask that folks really kind of avoid using the flash.
Okay.
It really ruins the look of the pumpkin. The hope is that the light comes from inside the pumpkin, not outside, and it also even at night, absolutely, and it really affects the experience for other people. Bright lights on this trail, because it is dark, affects your perception of light and dark, and it's really just not fair to the other people that are there.
That must be a tough task too, to get the lighting just right. It's one thing to work and carve on all these pumpkins, but the effect of the lighting adds to the overall experience.
I agree completely. I mean, light is the most important part of the show. It's also our greatest enemy. When you have too much light on a pumpkin, even a filler pumpkin or a jack-o'-lantern face pumpkin, or any of these intricate pumpkins, it takes away that three-dimensionality. It takes away that effect. And it's the magic that makes the show.
But not even, I know you don't, I know it's not a spooky show, this Jack-o'-lantern Spectacular.
Right. Yeah, we're not a scary show.
But the lighting in itself can just create that sort of a suspenseful ambiance while you're walking, because you are thinking about Halloween. Even if it's, you know, any, you know, Louis Armstrong, it's still, it's at night, and there's lighting, and there's
still
pumpkins,
that
and it's
mystical
Halloween,
kind
and
of
it's fall. You know?
Exactly.
You can't help but think about it.
It's important for folks to remember that it is dark here. It is at night. We do have lighting throughout the trail. The pumpkins cast a lot of light. But if a child's scared of the dark, it might be a good idea to hold their hand for the first couple feet, you know, to make sure that they get used to it. In our experience, kids of all ages really, really love the show, and very rarely do people feel like it's too dark. You know.
You mentioned some of the younger carvers that are just starting out. Do you train the younger people that are coming in? Are because you're a master carver, by the way.
Thank you.
It says it on your card.
It says it on the card. Yeah, I do influence on some level the training, but we have two artistic directors in our art studio in Oxford, Massachusetts, where the show was started. Actually, the founder's daughter, Kimby, and Danielle, who's been with the show forever, basically. They do the majority of the training for the new artists. They are beyond expert in what they do. My role is a little bit different than a lot of people in the show. I have my hands touch a lot of different parts. I help build the sets. I carve pumpkins. I help conceptualize.
And you're in on all the meetings, so
I'm in a lot of meetings. Not all of them. In a lot of them. I'm a very lucky person.
Like you said, you started out as a kid, as a spectator, and now I know it's a passion of yours, and you've come to do it as like.
I wouldn't change this for anything in the world. I work with the most remarkable group of people that you could imagine, that come from all different parts. Like I was mentioning, one of the artists comes from Hawaii every year to do the show. Wow. And you take this small group of people. We number about 20 full-time people, I'd say, and you
put them. Is that all year round?
Well, 20 for the show. You know, September, October, half of November. You work really long hours. You know, 18-hour days every day, in and out, 7 days a week, and it's a stressful environment. You know, we have high expectations for ourselves, but you know, 110,000 people came last year. We want to make sure that the show is bigger and better for them.
Right.
You put us in a closed environment and give us all this creative freedom, and we get through it somehow. At the end of the show, we still love each other.
Work, is it?
No, in fact, I know this sounds, I mean, it is philosophical to say. Confucius once said, when you find the work that you love, you never work another day in your life. I don't care how hard, how many hours I go straight. This isn't work to me. This is a gift that I've been given, I think.
The fact that you were a kid as a spectator and loved it and fell in love with it then, it's almost like your career path was mapped out for you at that point. It was your calling, don't you think?
It was in some way, although I do have an 18-year career in food service too. You know,
but that was just to pay the bills or something, right?
I know, it still is, unfortunately. Yeah, you know, you have to, it's hard to do something for 2-3 months a year and then not sustain yourself the rest of the year.
That's a good point.
Luckily, I have an incredible fiance at home that works her tail off too. She actually works for the show also. And she's also an employee here at the Roger Williams Zoo.
What do you do during bad weather? What do you deal? What happens?
So the show is open rain or shine. In my memory, in 10 years of doing the show, we've only closed 2 nights. The show was founded by a letter carrier, John Reckner, our founder.
So he goes through any weather.
Yeah, rain, sleet, snow, or shine, we are out. You put on your rain gear, and you put on warm socks, and you get out there, and you gut and you carve, and you do whatever you do whatever it takes to get the show open and looking good. You know, we have an obligation to our partners in the zoo. Like I said, we have an obligation to our guests and an obligation to ourselves to make sure that this thing looks awesome every night.
What are the dates that that you can take the tour of the Jack-o'-lantern Spectacular?
Sure, we open to the public on October 3rd of this year, and we'll be open every night until November 3rd.
Okay. Solid month.
Solid month, yeah.
That's after Halloween.
That's after Halloween, yeah. I think that Halloween falls midweek this year, and so we want to give people that last weekend to get a chance. And you know, the show gets better and better and better as it goes on. As it gets colder out, the pumpkins last longer. And if you can imagine, we will buy this year between 250 and 300,000 pounds of pumpkins.
I was going to ask you where they come from.
Well, we have 5 different varieties of pumpkin generally that we use. The
I didn't realize there
intricately
were different
carved.
kinds.
Yeah, yeah, there are all sorts of different kinds. This pumpkin is called a Big Max, and Big Max is a hybrid of gourd and pumpkins. We get our Big Max pumpkins through our broker, Richard, from an Amish farm that we've contracted with in Pennsylvania. I think they're about a 7-hour drive from here.
No kidding.
And we adore those farmers. They don't use a lot of machines in their farming, and they also don't use a lot of machines, if any. I've never been to the farm, but it's my understanding that in their tradition, they use hand-operated tools, and they use their backs.
This is not the lightest things.
No, this is not. This pumpkin weighs about probably 40 or 50 pounds. This is pretty small. That's probably 125 to my left, to your right. But these pumpkins, you know, you drop an apple on the ground and it gets bruised. The same thing would happen to this. And once it's bruised, it can rot faster. It doesn't take the ink as well. So these pumpkins are handled by hand from the time they're picked until the time they go in the dump, in the compost pile, actually. We actually calculated the total amount of weight that each one of us lifts in a month, and it's around 1 million pounds per person.
Every person that's on this tour is in phenomenal shape, right?
We're getting better every day. Yeah, I think I've lost like
gym.
15 pounds in the last month, actually.
That's fantastic.
It's awesome.
But you can't eat the pumpkin, though. That's the only thing.
No, I wouldn't eat these.
Yeah.
I wouldn't eat these. So these come from Pennsylvania, and then, you know, sourcing pumpkins locally is really important to us. We get a lot of pumpkins from Rhode Island.
Good point.
The Rhode Island Giant Pumpkin Growers Association is we work closely with, as well as the New England Giant Pumpkin Growers Association. So all the big guys, all the giants that the folks will see carved into jack-o'-lanterns on the trail that go up to, this year, probably around 1,800 pounds, 1,900 pounds.
Wow.
Those come from growers in Rhode Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts.
I think you're going to need a couple of guys to carry those.
Yeah, we use big machines to carry those. In fact, the largest pumpkin on record was grown last year in Rhode Island by Ronnie Wallace, and it tipped the scales at just over 2,200 pounds. The first pumpkin over a ton.
Are they grown organically, or is there any help that's given to them? Or
you know, I don't know for a fact, but I think it'd be pretty hard to get to a ton without a little bit of juice.
Well, luckily this isn't baseball, and no testing will be done.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, it's incredible. Those pumpkins, those giant pumpkins, the Atlantic Giants as they're called, will grow and at the beginning of August look just like a regular pumpkin in the field. And when August weather comes and it gets hot and dry, those pumpkins will grow 40 pounds a day.
Wow.
It is, you can almost see them grow. And you know, they have the big weigh-offs and stuff. We get them once the weigh-offs are completed, and it's remarkable. You see the trucks come in with it, the farmers come in with their trailers, and they're so proud. And in fact, a lot of people don't know this too. The seeds belong to the farmer, and we take great care every year when we do gut the giants. We take and preserve and clean off their seeds and seal them and send them immediately back to them.
They got to regrow, right?
Exactly. And some of these families have been working on growing these giants for a long time, and we want to make sure that we protect their
I love
investments.
the fact that they have their own competitions before they even come to you. Just for weight
we don't
purposes.
get a giant until it's on the scale.
And also apparently in the record books in some cases.
Exactly.
Too.
You know, David Letterman every year takes one of the giants and throws it off the roof of his building.
Right,
and that's quite a sight to see, actually.
And there's also a show now about pumpkin chunking.
The guys that build those
catapult them.
Exactly. The trebuchets and catapults, and that's incredible. We kind of treat these a little bit differently.
Yeah, you treat them with a little more love. I mean, you don't want to destroy these things if you're putting so much work and artistry into them.
We just have to watch them rot over the week, you know.
And there's nothing else you can do with them at that point except just put them into a compost. They'll just go back to the earth.
They'll just go back to where they came from and become good compost. We compost right here in Roger Williams Park, and that compost is used throughout the park to help fertilize, you know, all the beautiful trees and plants that they've got growing here.
And you mentioned the giant pumpkins. That's a local thing too.
Yeah.
You know, anytime you can mention the fact that it's local, that's a big deal.
Yeah, it's really important to us that to support our local economy. I mean, most of us live locally. I just moved to Rhode Island in December, actually, and I love it down here. To support our local economy, and you know, we are supported by our local economy.
The people who come and visit.
Yeah, people that come. I mean, people come from far and wide, sure, to see the show. A 27-year tradition, and families have made it a destination every fall. Let's go to New England, see the leaves change, go see the pumpkins. But you know, the people that are here, that are in our local community, they're the ones that are here day in and day out. There is a huge team of volunteers that come and help support the show every night. I mean, our colleagues and compatriots in the zoo, I mean, it is remarkable. The entire staff of the zoo is affected by our presence here, and works to support the show. You can imagine, you know, the pumpkin guys show up, and pumpkin girls show up, and we roll in with our tractor trailers and unpack, and we set up just in the parking lot of the veterinary hospital. And you know, we've got our gators, our six-wheelers, you know what I mean, that to drive through, and our bobcats, and we kind of take over.
But you know what? The zoo in the winter, maybe it slows down a little because maybe a few less people are visiting. Well, an event like this is the fall, but maybe an event like this kind of really it picks up for them.
Yeah,
or helps out a little bit.
We definitely we are a fundraiser for Roger Williams Zoo. And I know, help a lot in the education programs, in the conservation programs. We're so happy to do our part to help out the zoo. We feel like this is a really win-win for a lot of people. We're able to bring people to the zoo, and they get exposed to the animals and the education programs and all those things. We're able the zoo helps, I mean, not helps, promotes the show, and we get people to come see our art. I'm a nobody artist, man.
You're a master carver.
They say that, but I'm nobody. I'm just an artist like any other number of artists out in the world. I get to show my stuff to 100,000 people. Yeah,
not only that, but you know, people take pictures, they put them on their Facebook page.
It's unbelievable,
you know? Does Jack-O-Lantern Spectacular have its own separate website, or do you go through the Roger Williams Park Zoo?
We do.
Okay.
It's jacklanternspectacular.com.
Okay, well,
but all the show information, all the information about tickets, admission, the amenities that are available to guests here, parking, hours, all that can be found on the rwpzoo.org website, and you know, there's an FAQ there that'll answer a lot of questions people have. I think, you know,
we're almost out of time.
Okay,
so
great.
Just
load in the car and go.
Yeah, come have a good time, and it's until November 5th, right?
November 3rd.
November 3rd,
yeah,
okay.
Starting when the sun goes down.
George Nikolopoulos.
Yes, sir.
Master carver.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being a part of the art of art. Thank you for having us up here. It's a great time.
Thank you for coming and supporting us. It's incredible.
So come to the show. We will upload this show on our YouTube site. Check that out. In the meantime, I'm Sean Murphy. This is For the Record. We will see you next time. Take care.